For at least 15 years, the Union County Sheriff's Office has been misleading the public about the pet hair evidence in the Patti Adkins missing persons case. I believe it was a blatant attempt, not by one, but by many in the Sheriff's Department and maybe even the Ohio BCI, or some rogue elements within, to frame a man for murder. Since at least 2010, the sheriff and detectives have stated multiple times in print and televised media that pet hairs found on a person of interest tonneau cover belonged to Patti's cats. Statements that led to an outcry of thousands of persons across the internet demanding the arrest of the person of interest, and some of those comments calling for much worse. This flawed pet hair analysis is not the first crack in the facade of this story created by my local law enforcement. My first indication the sheriff's office had been less than truthful was when they called Patti's friend LaDonna credible. LaDonna allegedly gave Patti a ride to work the day she disappeared and is the same friend who divulged Patti's plan to climb in the boyfriend's truck after her shift at Honda. However, when I pulled the original police report from Patti's disappearance, I shockingly found LaDonna gave a completely different statement to Marysville police. She said Patti planned to go camping in Virginia Beach with another woman from work. Obviously, both stories can't be true. LaDonna was dishonest to police, so it's incredibly telling that Detective Stiers went on national television and painted her as a credible witness once her story changed to put the blame on the person of interest. But back to the pet hair analysis. It was conducted by an unaccredited lab in Texas, contained a multitude of mistakes, and may have even been tampered with. Ultimately, of 32 hairs found on the tonneau cover, one single hair allegedly belonged to Patti's dog, and one single hair allegedly belonged to one of Patti's 4 cats. I say allegedly because after 5 months of wrangling for this report with the Union County Prosecutor's Office, which ultimately resulted in me filing a complaint in the Ohio Court of Claims, I can see why they didn't want me to get my hands on this report. It contradicts everything they ever said about the pet hair from the beginning. First, let's examine the array of errors allegedly committed by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations in the preparation of the evidence slides to send to Texas, starting with the glaring discrepancy that 31 hairs were shipped by the BCI to Texas, yet the lab states 32 hairs were received. Question: where did that extra hair come from? Another troubling fact about the lab report: 24 of the 32 hairs collected as evidence were mislabeled as cat hair when in fact they were determined to be canine in origin. So how in the world could a professional crime lab like the BCI not even determine the correct species in 75% of the samples? This is already a disaster, and I have just gotten started. Let's look a little deeper. Of Patti's 4 cats, 2 of their DNA samples were apparently mislabeled by the BCI, which was discovered when the cheek swab DNA didn't match the corresponding hair samples. That's a 50% error rate by the BCI on that section. This is an incredible amount of mistakes for the Ohio BCI to make, too many to be considered a normal rate of human error. So then I dug a little deeper into the director of the Texas DNA lab itself, and the surprises just keep coming. Dr. Melba Ketchum, who is listed as the analyst on the lab report on Patti's case, was found by the Texas Forensic Science Commission to have engaged in professional misconduct in June of 2021 after testifying in a capital murder case. The commission found she committed misconduct when she testified about the forensic analysis of canine DNA while knowing her lab was not accredited under Texas law. The commission also found the doctor, who is by education a veterinarian, presented incomplete and misleading testimony regarding the DNA analysis and that it posed a substantial risk of misleading the jury. These are serious findings of fact, as the man Dr. Ketchum's tainted testimony helped to convict has been rotting in prison since 2009. There, but for the grace of God, goes the person of interest in Patti's case. How my local law enforcement could take this report and twist it in such a way that implicates the person of interest when it does anything but disappoints, discourages, and angers me. But the blows to the credibility of this report just keep coming. Not only did the Texas Commission find her and her lab unauthorized to give any scientific testimony about DNA in a court of law, it turns out Dr. Melba Ketchum is most known for claiming to have sequenced Bigfoot DNA, stating that her data indicates that the North American Sasquatch is a hybrid species, the result of males of an unknown primate crossing with female Homo sapiens. The Center for Inquiry described her research as badly flawed and that the so-called Bigfoot DNA samples were not collected uniformly, scientifically, or professionally, and resulted in many cases of contamination. More harshly, she has been accused of inventing her own science journal to publish her DNA proof of Bigfoot, when reputable science journals refused to publish her, as the Dallas Observer put it, worthless pile of crap. I thought it was pretty miraculous that out of a total of 32 hairs collected, the sheriff was lucky enough to find exactly one dog hair and exactly one cat hair that traced back allegedly to Patti's pets. In 2004, after this lab analysis was conducted, a study published by Forensic Science International stated DNA typing from samples of 1 up to 10 dog hairs is often problematic in forensic science. Worse, it was only in 2023 that scientists figured out how to use cat hair DNA in a way that could identify one individual cat. In other words, in 2001, cat hair DNA was only able to determine if two samples were related, like a mother and its kitten. My sheriff's office is batting 0 for 3 right now. They misled us when they called their star witness credible, the woman who drove Patti to work. In fact, she gave 2 vastly different stories to police regarding Patti's vacation plans. Not credible. They misled us when they told us the spot of blood on the tonneau cover belonged to the person of interest. In fact, the report states the blood belonged to an unknown male. It could have come from a worker at the tonneau cover factory. I don't even know why they would lie about this information, but they did. They misled us when they told us they found cat hairs on the tonneau cover that belonged to Patti's cats, which they unequivocally stated put Patti in the back of that truck.
Finally, investigators get a break in the case.
The lab down in Texas was able to confirm that some of the hairs taken from the tonneau cover matched Patti's cats. It puts, in our mind, Patti in that truck under that tonneau cover.
In fact, you couldn't even use cat hair DNA in 2001 to identify a single individual cat. Personally, I would have a hard time indicting a man based on a DNA analysis conducted by a Bigfoot fanatic, proven to be a fraud, guilty of professional misconduct, who gave testimony that helped mislead a jury, that convicted a man of murder who is still sitting in prison today. Still confident in my county's ability to tell the truth about Patti's case? I'm not. This is a frame job. I'm not going to stop looking for the truth because Dave Phillips, whose prosecutor's office fought against the release of these records, will be installed as judge next year. I fear without the transparency I seek, transparency the public is right to have according to state and federal statutes, transparency you now know your local law enforcement officials don't want you to have. Without that, I fear a grave miscarriage of justice will begin to unfold once Mr. Phillips assumes his new position. I just want the truth. Don't you?